1900 are The Last President by Ingersoll Lockwood, Chapter 4. There had been a strange prophecy put forth by someone, and it had made its way into the daily journals, and had been laughingly or seriously commented upon, according to the political tone of the paper, or the passing humor of the writer, that the 4th of March, 1897, would never dawn upon the American people. There was something very curious and uncanny about the prediction, and what actually happened was not qualified to loosen the fearful tension of public anxiety, for the day literally and truly never dawned upon the city of Washington, and well deserves its historical name, the Dawnless Day. At 6 o'clock, the hour of daybreak, such an impenetrable pall of clouds overhung the city that there came no signs of day. The gathering crowds could plainly hear the plaintive cries and lamentations put up in the negro quarters of the city. Not until nearly 9 o'clock did the light cease to shine in darkness, and the darkness begin to comprehend it. But although it was a cheerless gray day, even at high noon, its heaviness set no weight upon the spirits of the jubilant tens of thousands, which completely filled the city and its public parks, and ran over into camps and hastily improvised shelters outside the city limits. Not until the day previous had the president announced the names of those selected for his cabinet. The South and Far West were fairly beside themselves with joy, for there had been, from their standpoint, ugly rumors abroad for several days. It had even been hinted that Bryan had surrendered to the money changers, and that the selection of his constitutional advisers would prove him recreant to the glorious cause of popular government, and that the reign of the common people would remain but a dream of the struggling masses. But these apprehensions were short-lived. The young president stood firm and fast on the platform of the parties which had raised him to his proud eminence, and what better proof of his thorough belief in himself and in his mission could he have given than the following? Secretary of State William M. Stewart of Nevada, Secretary of Treasury Richard P. Bland of Missouri, Secretary of War John P. Altgeld of Illinois, Attorney General Roger Q. Mills of Texas, Postmaster General Henry George of New York, Secretary Navy John Gary Evans of South Carolina, Secretary Interior William A. Peffer of Kansas, Secretary Agriculture LaFay Pence of Colorado. The first thing that flashed across the minds of many upon glancing over this list of names was the omission therefrom of Tillman's. What did it mean? Could the young president have quarreled with his best friend, his most powerful coadjutor? But the wiser ones only shook their heads and made answer that it was Tillman's hand that filled the blank for Secretary of Navy, there left by the new ruler after the people's own heart. Evans was but a creation of this great commoner of the South, an image graven with his hands. The inaugural address was not a disappointment to those who had come to hear it. It was like the man who delivered it, bold, outspoken, unmistakable in its terms, promising much, impatient of precedent, reckless of result, a double confirmation that this was to be the reign of the common people, that much should be unmade and much made over, and no matter how the rich man might cry out in anger or amazement, the nation must march on to the fulfillment of a higher and nobler mission than the impoverishment and degradation of the millions for the enrichment and elevation of the few. Scarcely had the young president his large eyes filled with such a strange light, and his smooth, hairless visage radiant as a cloudless sky, his wife's arm twined around his, and their hands linked in those of their children, passed within the lofty portal of the White House. Then he threw himself into a chair, and seizing a sheet of official paper, penned the following order, and directed its immediate promulgation. Executive Mansion, Washington, D.C., March 4th, 1897. Executive Order Number 1. In order that there may be immediate relief in the terrible financial depression now weighing upon our beloved country, consequent upon and resulting from the unlawful combination of capitalists and moneylenders, both in this republic and in England, and that the ruinous and inevitable progress towards a universal gold standard may be stayed. The President orders and directs the immediate abandonment of so-called gold reserve, and that on and after the promulgation of this order, the gold and silver standard of the Constitution be resumed and strictly maintained in all the business transactions of the government. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon when news of this now world-famous executive order was flashed into the great banking centers of the country. Its effect in Wall Street beggars description. On the floor of the stock exchange, men yelled and shrieked like painted savages, and in their mad struggles, tore and trampled each other. Many dropped in fainting fits or fell exhausted from their wild and senseless efforts to say what none would listen to. Ashen pallor crept over the faces of some, while the blood threatened to burst the swollen arteries that spread in purple network over the brows of others. When silence came at last, it was a silence broken by sobs and groans. Some wept, while others stood dumb-stricken as if it was all a bad dream, and they were awaiting the return of their poor distraught senses to set them right again. Ambulances were hastily summoned, and fainting and exhausted forms were borne through hushed and whispering masses wedged into Wall Street, to be whirled away uptown to the residences, there to come into full possession of their senses only to cry out in their anguish that ruin, black ruin, stared them in the face, if this news from Washington should prove true. And one of the things is, at the current moment, there's not proper assessments out about the real values of companies, about the real gold standard. So therefore, people feel very threatened about that. And another thing that correlates to what has gone on in recent years is the idea that people like, well, Mike Pence and some others, it's like, why them? It's like, presidents aren't dictators. They run on certain conditions, certain groups run them. And by that, I mean their political parties too. Those political parties run those you can't, they'll say, we can't support your candidacy unless you have this person as a vice president and you agree towards this. And honestly, their executive orders can be voted yay or nay. So regardless of what they put in an executive order, it's up to the rest of the government to decide, is this something they're going to do?